Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
The Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union Board will come to order. Adjustments to the agenda. I think that Superintendent Pratt has one. And what do you got, Chris?
I would request that an executive session to discuss a personnel request to the board.
Okay, good with folks. I have two. We are going to add under reports a new 6A, and that will be business office payroll update. Folks who stick around will be invited to participate in that discussion if they wish to. And we have an item 6C, which is now 6B, which is update from Executive Committee on superintendent evaluation process. Okay, I'm going to ask the board and the administration just to tell us who they are. And Rick, you want to start us off?
Rick Holloway, Rockingham School Board.
Charles Chase, Athens Grafton School Board.
Brenda Farkas, Bellows Falls Union High School School Board.
Priscilla Lambert, Rockingham School Board.
Deborah Wright, Bellows Falls Union High School School Board.
Jessa Westclark, Grafton, and the forced merger Union Elementary District.
Jack Breyer, I serve on the high school board and am chair of the consolidated school district that includes Grafton, Athens.
I'm David Clark, and I'm a member of the Bellows Falls Union High School Board representing Westminster.
I'm Edie Lou Cole. I am the business manager.
Chris Pratt, Superintendent.
Molly Bannock, Chair of the Union High School Board from Westminster.
Great. Cheryl Charles. I'm on the forcibly merged Westminster, Athens, Grafton School Board representing Westminster and on the issue.
Under the current rules, the Supervisory Union Board is acting as a 9-member board. So I'm going to ask voting members if they would just raise their hands. Okay, we're your voting members. It is a fact based on the WNESU bylaws. All members of boards are de facto members of the Supervisory Union Board, although there are only 3 voting members from each board. I want to make that clear that there are a number of board members here tonight who are not necessarily regular attendees of WNESU meetings, but have an interest and a concern in tonight's proceeding. We're about to move into communication and public comments, and there are a couple of things that I need to say here. The first thing is that there is no board member or administrator sitting at this table who does not believe that staff are not entitled to be paid timely for the work that they have done. This has been a huge strain for staff. It has been a strain for administration. It has been a deep concern for the board. And the bottom line of this situation is that irregardless of what's happened and for what reasons, this board owns the responsibility for the problem and owns the responsibility for ensuring that the problem gets solved. And we are, as a board, looking forward to getting your help in solving these problems. We're going to go into communication here in just a moment, And if I get a show of hands of people who would anticipate that they would like to make a statement. Okay, not a whole lot of hands, so we can have a fairly free-ranging communication here. We're going to be soliciting your input. It is my expectation that the board will be making a written response to the questions that come up here tonight, because I am certainly aware, as are other board members, that there is concern on the part of staff that answers have not been forthcoming in a timely fashion. We want to make sure that all of those questions get answered, and those answers are in writing, so there's no question about how we intend to respond to your concerns. And I just want to find out, for starters, if any association heads want to begin by making a statement before I open it up to everyone. Yes, ma'am. And if you would please be so kind, because Josh, who probably knows a lot more people in this room than I do, knows your name, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody at this table, beginning with me, know everyone's name.
Yeah, no worries. However, my name is Jessica Akama.
It's not working.
It's okay, I'm really loud.
It's right here.
Can you guys all hear me? Yeah. So I am part of the grievance committee. No, I don't want that. That's kind of, you guys will all be blown away. I'm part of the grievance committee on the leadership team for the union, and we gathered results. We did a survey and we gathered the results, and I was wondering if I might be able to put this up on the screen so we can all see.
That would be great.
Fantastic.
Master the technology.
Anybody know how to do it? Sorry. I'm most prepared. Yes, you believe it. I just think it's dongle. Is that the dongle I'm hearing so much about? Can I just set it right here? Can I do this from right here? Is that okay? Are you okay? As long as you can see.
Jessica, could you use the...
I can use it now, yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry, I just was nervous at first, so you don't want that.
You just want me to give my steps.
When we're done, we can take a look at stuff.
Jessica, your last name again, please? Sorry.
Akama, A-U-K-E-M-A.
Blacked out here.
I think your computer freeze got froze up.
Is it done?
Oh, it may have happened.
The computer.
Oh, no.
Can you wing it a little bit while Rick is working?
Sure, I'll just go ahead and get started, sorry. Okay, so good evening, members of the board. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you adding this important issue to the agenda this evening. So feel free to interrupt with any questions that you may have along the way. The WNEA Grievance Committee, which consists of myself, Lily Hart, who is not here today, Anna Majeski, and Samantha McAllister. We've gathered information about the payroll issues in a survey that we asked the union members to fill out, and this is the data that we found. Haha! All right. Okay. So although this data is limited to the 25 members who responded, we think it is useful in painting a picture of how people have been affected. We know from conversations with many of our colleagues that it does not give a complete picture of how many people have been affected. Any data is imperfect, but we hope that you will still find these results useful in understanding the scope of the problem and its effects. From this data, you can see that the 2 pay periods where respondents were most affected were in November and in August. One major difference between the experience of the effects of these 2 late payments was the communication employees received. In August, there was a clear and personal communication to affected employees. In November, this was not the case. For the 403B and flex spending accounts, it seems that money has been withheld from employees' paychecks, but not deposited into the correct accounts, and this has been happening since early November. We aren't sure how many employees' FSAs have been affected and to what degree. As far as the 403Bs, we believe everyone who is currently making deposits to the 403B account has been affected. However, we have no way to know for sure, as this issue was found by a member who reached out to us, and nothing about this has been communicated to us by the business office. And since this money is supposed to be invested, now there's the added burden of lost interest, since the stock market has been making gains for the past 2 months. This chart is an illustration of how big of a problem communication about these issues has been. While we understand that those working in the business office were putting in many hours into trying to solve the payroll issues, they were not effectively communicating with individuals who had problems with their pay. One thing that may have remedied this situation would have been proactivity on the part of the SU, both in terms of communication about the situation and in terms of remedying it. Additional concerns: not being paid for the correct column or step on pay scale. Sick and personal time not being accurately reflected. Deductions and or benefits being taken out twice or not at all. Condescending emails from the business office. And whether W-2s will be accurate at the end of the month. Lack of communication from the business office about the full extent of the problem has made it challenging for employees to be proactive about the difficulties that may arise in their own finances as a result of the problems the SU has been experiencing. It also bears mentioning that as of today, we still have members who have not been paid for their after-school work hours from several pay periods ago. I would also like to add that recently an issue has come up about communication between employees and the board. We ask that if there is an expectation of individual employees not to contact board members, it would be helpful to have clarity around that so everyone can be on the same page and act accordingly. Moving forward, we would like to know what your thoughts are on the best route to take resolve to these issues and to restore employees' faith in the WNESU. Thank you for your time.
That we will more thoroughly address some of the issues you've brought up when we get to the business office payroll update. I would like to know if there are other people in the room who would like to contribute to the communication public comment portion of the discussion. Is that Sue? And if you could just identify yourself for the...
Susan Swan from the high school.
Thank you.
In the last couple of days since we filled out that survey, there are a couple of new issues that have come about. Just sitting here this evening talking with a couple of people, we found that 4 or 5 of us have had several Blue Cross Blue Shield claims denied either, and I haven't had an opportunity to research it. I got a phone call from my child today that said that all of their appointments, they had gotten contacted from their doctor and said that all of their appointments had been denied and that the doctor was not paid for the appointments in the fall. So I haven't had time to research that, to know what's going on, if it's a Blue Cross issue, if it's a communication issue with the HRA or the FSA or what. But there's definitely a problem there because just sitting right here, there were 5 of us that said I had the same thing in the last day or 2. I've had the same thing in the last day or 2. So there's definitely something going on there with the communication. Also, after today's email from Mr. Pratt, a few of us made phone calls to TD Bank And we were told by Matt that, and a couple of us made the phone calls, that TD does not have only one person who would administer our accounts. If somebody was missing, somebody else could step in and make sure that those monies got applied if they had received them. And additionally, one other thing that wasn't mentioned in the presentation was that there were some people with FSA accounts who had claims denied and cards, you know, like accused of making fraudulent charges or trying to use their FSA cards fraudulently because the funds were not in their FSA accounts when they tried to pick up prescriptions.
Thank you. Josh, you got that down?
I do.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay. Yes, please. Oh.
Hi, Kelly Green, Central School and Westminster resident. Back in the beginning of September, the Brattleboro Reformer has an article about Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union changes lawyers. The end of that article, in addition to changing attorneys, the supervisory district agreed to deficit spend up to $70,000 to hire another accountant to work in the business office because of ongoing difficulties with the new accounting software. Clark said the district agreed that an additional person needed to be hired. He said since the new accounting software was adopted, the district has had huge amounts of overtime, and this was an attempt to address that issue. That was the beginning of September.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to ask your forbearance. We are, unfortunately, it's a little bit like some aspects of paychecks. We are very late in adopting a supervisory union budget. I anticipate that we will be able to do this in about 10 minutes time, and I would like to get that done, and then we will move into a discussion of a business office update on payroll, and we can have some back and forth discussion around that. The questions that we can't answer, Josh will note them down, and those will be part of the written response. So moving, oh, pardon me, review and approve minutes. I'm getting ahead of myself. Can I have a motion on minutes, please? Jack has a motion. Everyone has had an opportunity to review those minutes. Any corrections? All right then. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now we are down to new business for discussion and action. Approve fiscal year 21 budget. The Budget Committee met before this meeting and has recommended a WNESU budget of $14,398,887.53 to the SU board for consideration. Can I have a motion on that, please?
So made.
Okay, and I would also like to have a second. Rick had the motion?
Yes.
Who's got the second?
I'll take it.
Okay, Jesse's got the second. Okay. We are now open for discussion about the WNESU proposed budget for fiscal year 21. Discussion. Okay. I will simply say that the committee spent quite a bit of time working on it. The committee made a motion at the last meeting to seek reductions of between $200,000 and $250,000 in the proposed WNESU budget. The actual recommended cuts came to just over $260,000. I'm simply telling you this for the purpose of information. Is there any discussion before we move to a vote? Okay, then all those in favor of accepting the WNESU budget as presented of $14,398,887.53, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed?
No.
Okay, we have one no.
Two no's.
Priscilla and Deb?
We have two no's?
Two no's.
Okay, thank you. We are down to reports 6A, business office payroll update. And who would like to begin fielding that? Nobody,
Do you want me
obviously.
to?
If you would, please, Edie.
Okay. We have gone back through all of the timesheets we have, all the contracts we have, and everyone has been paid for all their hours. Now, if you're still missing hours, you need to come and see us because we may not have a timesheet. A lot of the difficulty we had with the November 22nd pay is we were missing contracts and we were missing timesheets and we didn't realize it. But we've got that under control now. The benefits are caught up. We have not taken the time to update the time off because paying you is far more important than you can look up what you've taken for days off. We will get that done. Our next goal is to make sure that the support staff gets their retro pay. I know it was late to get the CBA ratified. We still need everyone to come in and sign their revised contract. We don't want to pay some and not others. And so please make sure if you haven't signed a new contract that you do come in and do that. But our plan is to get everyone caught up with their new rate and their retro pay on the 31st of January. I know this has been tough for all of you. I apologize for that. It wasn't for a lack of trying, believe me. It's just there had been no cross-training, and so we kind of walked into it blind. That's why cross-training is so important, so that if anyone leaves, then someone else can just step in and take over. But it took us a while. I know a lot of you were affected negatively, and like I said, I do apologize for that. I think we've gotten everything taken care of, but if you do feel like you're missing hours still, please come in, see us. It's possible that we didn't get a timesheet. So we want to make sure that you get paid for everything you've done.
Questions from the board for Edie? Jessa?
I do have a couple. You said timesheets. Do you mean paper?
Yes.
What do we use for HR management software? Is that not included with the new state
Well,
package?
we had a time clock put in, but it was never used.
What, 3 years ago you had that put in?
I think it was about 3 years. We do want to get that up and running. It should have been up and running.
Do we have an HR management software where they can see leave balances in real time and that sort of thing? Or
They
do
have substitutes online where they log in their time off, and they can go in and they can look and see what they've used and what they have left, yes.
Everyone can?
Yep.
And then, okay.
And Jessa, we are looking to move forward to the automated timesheets at the end of the year. We've already priced some systems out, and so to move us into the 21st century. Yeah, we are. We are looking at moving towards automated timesheets. for next year, to move us into the 21st century, to hopefully alleviate a lot of the redundancy and inaccuracies that we're seeing in the current timesheets. Like I said, we're still using the paper. That alone can cause many issues when you have, I was looking at it last couple weeks ago, and it's very possible that the timesheets can go through at least 4 to 5 different people before even making it up to the central office. So for the time being, what I've done is I've kind of streamlined that process so the timesheets aren't passing through so many people's hands, because the more hands they pass through, the more likelihood something's going to be lost or misplaced. So until we can get the new software after July 1, we've streamlined that process, but we're looking forward to moving towards the automated timesheets.
Follow-up, Jessica? I just had one final statement that I think if you look back to our November, I think if you look back to our November meeting, and I just feel a little blindsided by this tonight. I think if you look back to that meeting, you'll find something in the minutes where we had said that we understand payroll is not the purview of the board, but we're part of the public face of the entire district, and we really wanted the board appraised if there was further payroll problems. This is the first, tonight is the first I've heard that anything else, it wasn't all fixed. So just gonna put that out there.
Questions from staff? All right, yes, Susan.
We feel like the time clock's in at the high school, we were using that.
But the business office never used them on our end.
Why? Why not?
You would have to ask the former payroll person.
Let's push it off on her again, right?
No, I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying, you know, I'm not sure if the software didn't talk. I'm not sure why, but we never moved forward with it.
I'm sure it was her decision.
Can we put that on the list of questions that need a written response? And did you get the question,
I have
John?
the question. Who asked it? Okay, thank you.
We have it, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, Jack, you want to respond? I take it.
I'm going to pass for the moment.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Kelly Spalding. I remember we got paid from using the time slip, the time cards, because we used it for quite a while without putting in time sheets. I still have mine on my desk.
Sean?
Yes. For homework lab?
Am I to understand that if we had a issue with our if we had an issue with our paychecks and it has not been resolved yet, that we should be contacting you? Have you fixed all issues? So if I haven't received back pay for something, I should reach out?
Absolutely, please do. To the board?
All right, I will email you.
I'll let stand up in the back, Molly.
Can we ask him if he's still thinking about unresolved issues?
Andrea Carlson, I work at the high school. I'm wondering how it's going to be figured out what interest has been lost on our 403 plans and how that will be reimbursed. Thank you.
Administrative response on that, Chris?
Yeah. Talking with people today, what the business office has done, they've reached out to the TD, who was it? Ameritrade, and we've requested a report that they put together to give us an idea as best that they can to see what has been lost from the monies not being in the 403B. So we're pressing them to give us that report to see what it would look like. So I'm also looking at trying to get a financial advisor into the SU sometime within the next few weeks to answer further questions for anyone who might have them. But yeah, we put in a request to get that report to see what the losses that people may have occurred during the 403s not being in there, and so we can do what we can to kind of recoup those losses for all the people who were affected.
Please do.
As a Westminster resident, where will that money come from?
Good question.
Needs to be put back
Who's
in?
paying for that?
As a superintendent, I'm going to look into it further because what I've been told is that there was an issue on their end in regards to not processing the 403s. So I need to look into further that to find out actually where everything lies. And then once I get that information, then I'll have to figure out if we have to go after Ameritrade to recoup our losses, or what that looks like for the SU.
I have a question, Edie. Oh, sorry, go ahead, would you?
So just to be very clear, you are definitively saying that people will get their interest?
At this point, I don't know. I have to report where it's going to come from.
I think that, I don't even know what to say, never mind.
Answer the questions that I don't have 100% answer for you.
My name's Brenda Forrest. I work here at the middle school, and I did call Ameritrade this afternoon at 3:10. And I specifically asked them if they were at fault, and they responded, you need to speak to your HR people, and they were not liable because it wasn't on their end. So my question to you is, if it's on your end, which from their information to me this afternoon, that was my impression. I don't think I was the only one that had that impression. I think there were a couple other people. Where's that money going to come from? Because there was interest lost. In my case, there was over $1,800 not put in, and my estimate was on the low end. I know people who have put in more than I have over the last 6 payments. So that's a huge amount of interest. I am probably closer to retirement than some of the other people sitting here. So for me, it will affect me much more so than someone who's just starting out. So I'm very interested in where that money will be coming from, because it's my understanding at this point that it will not be, the liability is not on the end of Ameritrade. And that was from the representative I spoke to today, and who informed me that if I needed further information, or anyone at HR needed further information, that they could call the customer service number, ask the question, and they would transfer your call to the party that needed to be contacted to get your information. So it wasn't a real difficult thing to do, and they answered my phone call within 3 minutes of waiting. So I felt they were very good.
That's a good question. And I want to state unequivocally that there is no way that a member of staff who has been contributing to a retirement account should be expected to eat the lost interest. You have this board's clear attention on that matter. At this point, it appears as a little bit of what sometimes referred to as he said, she said, but this is another item that you can be assured will be part of that written response, because we need to have answers that everyone can understand. But I want you to hear it clearly that it wasn't the staff's fault, and the staff will not be held responsible for an error which was not of their doing. Okay. I still have a question for Edie, and I'd be happy to go back up the room here if there are other people who have questions or comments. And my question, Edie, is that Kelly referred to a deficit amount of $70,000 for a new hire. What's the status on that?
We haven't hired anyone.
If I can follow my question up, when might we anticipate that hire?
I was told 2 weeks ago that they did hire someone when I was on the phone with them.
I can ask. So just for clarification, is that, yes, we did hire someone for the new payroll. I introduced her yesterday at the opening meeting. So we did hire that person. In regards to the position that the business office had requested to fill back in November, it wasn't filled for, in my understanding, it wasn't filled for reasons is that we're in the middle of transition, and Teresa, who took over the payroll and the accounting, we would have needed to take her away to train a new person to come in to do that. So taking her away from trying to work on the payroll issues that we were seeing, we continue to see, we didn't have the bodies to train someone else to figure out the new e-finance system, and we would have lost ground and not gained ground. So that person wasn't filled. We did fill the position. It was Joe Ellen is the new person that I introduced yesterday, who's taken over the payroll and the human and the HR piece. So we do have that person in place now. We just didn't use the deficit spending money that we anticipated on using in November to fill that position.
I want to just check, I just want to check with my board to see if there are questions, and we'll go back up the room. Questions from the board? Jessica?
I have one question. The FSA accounts, do we deposit the full election at the beginning of the year so that's available for them, or is it as they deposit?
It's a full amount at the beginning of the year. Oh, not the FSA?
The FSA and the FSAs have to do, we have to bi-weekly.
But I mean, do we deposit, if you elect $700, is that available to you January 1? Or is it only as it comes out of the paycheck? So you only get like $30 every 2 weeks available?
That's before me, and I was told it was done that way because if somebody leaves, then if you forefronted all of it, it's gone. So to protect the district, I was told that, no, this is a bi-weekly, because there was different things that I questioned when I came on board, and that was one of the things I was told. So yes, it's a task that has to be done every single time.
So it's the HRA that's
The
front-loaded?
HRA is, yes, those are front-loaded at the beginning of the calendar year. In January, they're front.
I'm sorry, Teresa. Are you done?
Sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Is there follow-up from the board before we go back up the room? Deb?
I'm greatly concerned to hear that people's Blue Cross Blue Shield claims were denied, and that they're and possibly even considered fraudulent for trying to use a card that should have been funded. That's serious. You got employees who might have, staff who might have legal problems because of the use of a card if it goes that far. So I'm greatly concerned that that's another piece. We're looking at unfunded insurance, health insurance.
I didn't know that.
It's been funded completely. I wasn't gonna speak, but I gotta tell you, the health insurance has been paid. It's not been something that's not been unfunded or not paid late or anything. That has been paid, so I believe that if there is an issue, I gotta believe that it's on the other end. Because, I mean, the proof's in the pudding with the paperwork.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the board. Are we allowed to request a third-party audit for the finances?
I have no idea, but Mr. Breyer may.
Actually, one of the things that this has brought up is the need to probably supplement our team with some external audit assistance, because it seems clear to me that just the process of calculating out interest loss alone is going to be labor intensive, and it's also clear, as it must be to all, that our business office is having enough trouble of finding staff to fill the positions that we've authorized, to let them go out and try to find yet more people. That's clearly not happening. I do want to put some of these difficulties in a little bit of context, because I think it's important. Clearly, what you're dealing with is the most important symptom of a problem that is spilled out into multiple parts of our operations. I don't know how many of you have I'm going to guess the bulk of you don't spend your time watching the Fact TV reviews of our show, of our meetings, as scintillating as they are. But if you had, you would have known for the last several months that the complete fiasco that has been the new finance system has affected every single function of this district. You'll note we are passing budgets and doing so in an expedited fashion in late January as opposed to November. You may have heard that one of the districts has delayed their district meeting until April because data just wasn't going to be ready. There were supposed to be audits of the final year of the old districts that were closed down by the state, and those have not been produced or reviewed yet because, and they were supposed to have happened December 31st. There is an avalanche of problems. This is clearly the one that's the most immediately painful to the most people, but it is an avalanche that you need to be aware of. We got into the software that we now are trying to use. 2 pieces of it were written by IBM almost a decade ago and were never successfully integrated by them. The contractor that put the paper around these and pretended it was a real finished product managed to convince the Agency of Education that this was legitimate software, and how it was spec'd is absolutely beyond me as an IT person. I'm scandalized. And so we picked it up in good faith as an early adopter. Rule 1, never be an early adopter. But did so under the assumption that we had something that was functional. And what we had was a joke. And so as a consequence, people were reverting to doing things in paper that were done electronically for years, stuff that could be done on an Excel spreadsheet, but you couldn't do anything the way it was set up. And literally every function, from payroll to accounts payable to budget forecasting, were affected in one form or another. We had one situation where your board members earn about $400 a year for their services, and found that the benefits package for that $400 was in the tens of thousands of dollars. That's how bad the software calculations were. Everything was fouled up beyond all measure. You know what they say about if you really want to screw stuff up, put it into a computer? That's what had happened. And the team here were working, I'd come in late in the evenings, and they were still working. I don't think Edie has gone home for a full weekend in months. And the problem is, despite all that effort, a broken system is a broken system. And while it's certainly functioning better than it was in November, when everybody's pay was screwed up yet again, it's still not functioning in full. And this is what you're dealing with here is the consequences of that. I retold you all, I think in December, that the problems have been fixed. Clearly they're not fixed, but they're better, but they're not fixed. And we're trying to figure out what the ancillary damage is, and it seems like there's a lot, pieces that nobody had thought of. It never occurred to me that there'd be issues with people's your health savings accounts, or your HRAs, or some of these other benefits that you get. And it just is clear that we're going to be playing cleanup for a while.
You've been recognized, and then Sean Murphy.
Hi, I'm Melanie LaRosse. I work at the Bells Washington High School. And we keep referring to November, and what I'm curious about is the article came out in September that we had set aside $70,000 to hire and help. That would have been when our previous payroll person was there. She could have used the help and maybe we wouldn't have been into this huge avalanche, but it seems to me that we chose to let her flounder and she worked through the problems the best that she could, and now we're in this mess. And I'm just curious why somebody wasn't hired before the last few weeks.
Melanie, the response is forthcoming after Sean has spoken.
I just wanted to clarify what I just heard before, Jack, about the FSA. My understanding of FSAs is the money is available immediately, and it would be concerning if it weren't, given that most people put it in there to pay the employee contribution for their health insurance, and if they had a bill on the third day of the year and that money was not there, then that money would most likely go to waste, or they would end up with a ton of contacts that they may or may not need. So I'm hoping for clarity on that. Maybe I misheard, or
Okay, administration is querying twice. Can we get a response on that?
I think if you go into health equity, it shows it's all there. But past practice has been to always just send it on a bi-weekly basis. I don't know why. I know with the new health insurance negotiations, some of those things are changing. They didn't address the FSA.
By law, the FSA has to be in there in full, and I think we contribute to it on a bi-weekly basis, but if the money's there for people to use.
Well, the amount's there, but the money comes in every 2 weeks.
Sean, I have a sense of an open question here, which I think is going to be one of those items that's going to need a written response. If you feel that you have an adequate answer, you can tell us, but otherwise I think that's what we're going to need to do here. Edie, can you respond to Melanie LaRosse's question about the hire which we have not made and the timing of that? Do I have your question correctly, Melanie?
Well, I'm really actually just dumbfounded, actually, that we had set aside money in September, knowing that we had significant issues back in September. We all knew that. You set it up there. We all knew that. We were having trouble. The difference would be that Rhonda actually would reach out to us and apologize to us directly. But nobody was hired. She had to flounder through trying to figure out the system on her own. Obviously that didn't work. Seemed to me like very little support. I can't prove that. And we only hired somebody within the last few weeks after all of us have come forward to say that there's issues. That is a huge concern. I don't understand that.
Mr. Carter.
Rick.
I believe it's true that we've not actually filled that particular position yet.
So then that's what we're saying.
There's two positions.
Additional
positions.
Rick, go ahead. You have the floor.
So Edie would have to clarify this, or somebody from the business office, but I spend a lot of time there because I go in and sign everybody's checks every 2 weeks, and I spend a fair amount of time doing that, believe it or not. I can't remember her name now, another woman in there, Teresa originally replaced.
Christine.
Who left when?
She left in May.
So she left in May, okay, so that's not relevant to my response, but I was trying to put that timeline together in my head of like the chain of events. So the person that we budgeted was to try to get someone in anticipation of Edie's retirement this summer. That was when the board put that $70,000 in to hire another person. It was to bring someone in as soon as possible in anticipation of Edie's retirement.
So that's not.
Well, that's the article in the paper. That's not our board minutes.
Well, that's not what was said, and that's not what we were led.
That's not what was said where?
That's what?
That's not what was said where?
In the paper, in the article. It said that there was money set aside to hire somebody because of the concerns.
Okay.
It said nothing about somebody retiring. It said, that somebody's coming on board to help with the payroll, to help with the business stuff. So I just would like clarification.
Perhaps my memory is wrong then. I don't think so.
Melanie, I believe that Jack Breyer would like to respond to your question, and I just want to check with Josh. Do you have Melanie's question, because we may want to get into written detail about it, because I think this is it's a question that needs an answer, Melanie.
Yes,
Go ahead, Jack.
I can understand why this gets garbled. At the beginning of our last budget year, we had discussed bringing someone in to supplement the staff, to essentially put somebody in that could help during the transition process when Edie left. We did not put that money into the budget. We talked about it, we didn't. Then, later, what happened was as the extent of the software failure became clear, we did authorize a staff person to augment the current team. That position has not been filled. They were basically too busy running around trying to do the work to train somebody, and we could debate the wisdom of that, because I would debate the wisdom of that. And then when the payroll person left, that was yet another vacancy, which I gather is the one that's been filled. So that's the difference. There was to be an assistant for Edie. That position was not authorized. There was a position created to fill in, to help, at least on an interim basis, to help the folks who were running huge overtime and really getting burned out. That position is still open, and there was then the payroll position became open, and that position, I gather, has just recently been filled?
Yes.
Or is in the process of being filled?
No, last Monday.
Okay, so there you are. I mentioned this partly just because we want to make sure everybody has the chronology correct. And also, yes, I think it's fair to say that if you've got a piece of software code that's breaking and everything's being messed up and people are being pushed to do it on paper, that's probably not the best time to have a shortage of staff, but there you go.
Molly, can you take the mic down to Priscilla?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to support Rick in his statement. When the board met, and it was, a lot of it was an executive session, so there was a big discussion about adding a person to the budget because it was putting us in deficit. But a lot of our reasoning for it was the fact that Edie was going to retire at the end of this year, and my expectation, right or wrong, was that this would be done about January as far as supporting that and starting that transition. This gave them time to find a good person to support, and time for Edie to also give some training on her job. Due to other circumstances that have taken place and some other reasoning behind our decisions, we didn't move as fast on that maybe as we should have, particularly with the business office being down in time frames. So, but coming back to that article in the paper, I think it was misinformation. And yes, the software did affect some of our decision, but most of our decision had to do with Edie's being able to carry on her position and being able to form some transition for that.
Superintendent Pratt?
So being the one who proposed the addition of that position in the business office, I don't know what the paper said, but it was specifically I wanted to have a transition plan in place for when Edie retired, because I know from around Vermont, finding business administrators is very, very difficult. Finding anyone to fill a position in a business office is very difficult. So that was the initial request that I made to the board, was for a transition plan. I made that initial request last year at the budget time. We needed to make cuts from the budget, so that was added, but it was taken out in order to keep the budget down. As far as why the position was not filled, circumstances took place where we needed to find another payroll clerk. We still had this position to fill. We started interviewing and we got a new payroll clerk. I believe we started, I posted it within a week. We went through a first round of interviews. We were unable to find anybody. We went through a second round of interviews. We were able to find the Joellen that we have now. It was at least a 2-week notice that she had to give her employers, so that's why she just started this past week. We did try to fill the positions, but you can't fill positions if the people aren't out there and don't have the skills to do the position. The position of the person that coming in for Edie to retire needed a specific skill sets. We needed that person to take over the accountant piece while Therese was freed up to work with Edie on the transition process. We could not find that person. It wasn't that and then trying to fill that position was someone who wasn't qualified. Teresa does just not have the time to train that person and take away from the work that needed to be done in order to get people paid. That's the best answer I can give you.
The mic is headed back up to the floor because I have a hand here.
So, I'm just curious if it was important for you to have somebody it was important for you to train somebody for Edie's position. Why wasn't it important for you to have a payroll person in place before Rhonda was gone?
It was. You heard what I just said. You're trying to fill the position in a timely manner. You can't fill a position if the qualified people are not out there.
It was my understanding that Rhonda's the only one that was doing payroll and was the only one that had all the passwords and all the information. So why wouldn't you have somebody else there as well?
What does that have to do with finding someone? If you can't find someone, you can't find someone.
We were getting paid.
You
were getting paid and someone did they cross-trained.
No matter how much help you want to give anybody, you have to hire the right person to do that. We could not find that person. In order to get that person, we were going to have to take time away from Teresa, or even when Ronnie was here, to help cross-train. We did not have the luxury of that. With the new system we had that the state gave us, it was a disaster. We could not free up any time to train this person to work with either the payroll clerk or Teresa or anyone else. It was going to set us back even further.
It just doesn't seem like it was the best idea to let Rhonda go or whatever happened there and not have anybody in place. And I have an email from Edie stating that we are lucky that we were getting paid, that Teresa was nice enough to volunteer to pay us.
Rhonda would never say anything like that.
I know
she would.
But
bend over backwards.
that's an issue. That's what we're talking about with communication. You know, our people are coming to you and saying this is a problem, and the response from Edie is specifically, well, you're lucky that you got paid. I have the email if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, that's not exactly what I said.
Well, I can.
I have some similar insinuations.
Yeah, but I do want to respond to you. You're bringing up a personnel issue, which I think that this table is going to need to address. I would like to make sure that it's a thoughtful response, and I would like to include that in the written responses. Certainly, if Edie wants to, respond directly, I'm okay with that. but I want to avoid a tit-for-tat discussion and see if we can't get you a factual answer to a question which a lot of people in the room probably wondering about.
Yes. So, okay, fine, then answer the question, you know, it just doesn't make sense that we don't have, there wasn't a payroll person in place first before Rhonda was let go. Or a backup system. Or a backup system, you know, like there's, it's just, it seems like poor planning.
Well, maybe poor planning, but as a superintendent, I had to make a difficult decision. And that's a decision I had to make, and I have to take responsibility for what came of that. But it's a decision that I made with Edie, a difficult one, but it had to be made if we were going, for a number of reasons that I'm not going to discuss in open with anyone. And I can't discuss.
I think your question, as I said before, because it's on the minds of a lot of people in this room, will get a written response, which will respect, you know, both the confidentiality of the situation, as well as give you an answer for why decisions that were made were made. I think Chris is right. Certainly, when we're talking about a personnel decision, we need to be respectful of privacy issues, but this is also, quite bluntly, a policy issue. And when we're discussing policy, that's very much an open session discussion. So you will get a response to the policy concerns that drove a personnel decision. And I do see your hand back up, Melanie, and since Molly's right there with the mic, go ahead, and then if we can move toward the center of the room again.
So I feel like we're just dancing around this, and regardless of the decision that was made and who the decision was about, I still don't understand why in September we had talked about hiring somebody and to support the accounting issues that we had. I don't understand. There was not a personnel issue in September, and I don't understand why that person wasn't either supported in that position or somebody wasn't called upon to come in and help at that time, regardless of what decisions were made. It doesn't matter at this point.
Okay, Melanie, I'm not trying to be perfect with you, but we do have your question on the written response list, and we would like to provide you with an answer which is clearly understandable, not only for you, but for board members. Ready, Molly, yep.
I'm just curious, since I did have concerns about the 403B payments. What about our Vermont teachers' retirement? Did that go in? Or is that another issue that the money was, for some reason, on hold? Was that money deposited? Because that's the one account I have yet to check. Did that go in a timely?
Teacher retirement, nothing has changed.
So all the money that was taken out on a bi-weekly basis was placed in Vermont State Teachers' Retirement on a bi-weekly basis, as it should have been prior to any.
It doesn't go bi-weekly.
Well, however, it's always been, it continued, there was no change, so we don't have to worry about loss of monies there.
Visters and Beamers were fine.
Okay. So the only other thing I'd like to say about the 403B, because that's a real issue for me, is that I didn't find out about any issues with that until a week ago. I would have greatly appreciated in September, October, November, December, or January, hopefully sooner than January, that there was an issue with that. And that should have come from somebody in the business department to notify using an email, a letter. I mean, there's a lot of ways to let us know that there was an issue. And I feel personally that It was, I mean, if you knew there was an issue, we should have known there was an issue, and I shouldn't have waited. I didn't have to wait until 3 days ago to find out and then make some phone calls. It would have been, I think, considerate of people to have notified people who have a 403B that there were issues, you were working on the issues or you weren't, whatever it be, but we should have been notified and not gone 2.5 months with that money being taken out of our checks and not deposited. We're supposed to be a community, and communication is supposed to be important, and I don't feel that's happening right now.
Brief response from administration before we move to the back of the room again.
I notified people when I found out. I notified people when I found out.
That was today? That was, yeah. Today. You just found out today? Because your email came today.
Yes, I sent an email out today.
So you found out today too?
That will be on the written list of responses. Go ahead.
Hi there. I was absent for a week over the time to take the Senate poll practice, but would it be plausible to get a third-party audit for all the discrepancies that have transpired to this point?
Ryan, I requested that.
Oh, thank you.
Would you like to just go back down the board table here briefly, and we'll go back around the room if need be. Any board member have a question, a comment? Yes, Deb.
Another thing that concerns me is that no organization should ever stop communicating, and I'm assuming, since they're saying since November, they have not had answers, and I would take that to mean that people have been contacting by email, by phone, by turning up at the office, central office, and not getting a response. If they have problems, they've seen them, not just in this last week or yesterday, they've been seeing them earlier, and they've obviously been reaching out. We weren't aware of it, but no response from central office is wrong. I mean, it should never have occurred, and I'm not sure why that had stopped. But you can't run a business, any kind of business, without keeping the lines of communication open with your staff.
We have answered emails and we have answered phone calls. I do apologize if my email came off kind of rude. I didn't mean it. I will tell you, I haven't gotten a lot of sleep, and so sometimes when I say things, I don't mean it the way it comes out. It's just been a rough year and a half. Once we started transitioning to e-finance, and then for 9 months we had no training. We did have a trainer come in September, work with all of us. She was wonderful. That helped a lot. But losing my accountant, who had been with me for 6.5 years, knew everything inside and out, and then giving Teresa time to get up to speed, and then I was trying to get ready for budget season and everything else I have to do. So I never intend to be rude, but I will tell you, with not much sleep and working 7 days a week, it probably came out very wrong from the way I intended, and I do apologize. I'm hoping that we're going to get things under control. The auditors are coming back, and they will be going through everything. We did have auditors come in, do you remember, was it November? Yeah, they did come in November, but they will be back, and so we will verify everything, we'll make sure everything's okay, but yeah, I have never This is my 4th software conversion. I have never experienced anything like this before. This has been definitely going to be a couple of years to remember, or at least maybe to forget, because it has been really, really tough.
There was a specific question about when administration became aware of the 403B problem, and I think we're going to need to get a specific response on that. I'm hopeful that we can answer all of these questions within the next week or two. I'm going to go back to the board table. I did have Judy, can you give me this moment, because I did want to recognize Jessa, and then I'll be happy to get back to you. Go ahead, Jessa.
While we're making a list of things for a response for Josh, I pulled up the draft September minutes, and it does not have the monies for that accounting position, but I know we did discuss it. Can we get those specific minutes looked up? I'm on the phone with the Google Drive, so I can't. But it's not in the September minutes that were given to us as a draft for the October meeting for approval. And then secondly, where is the accounting position advertised? Because I can't find it, and it's not on the SU careers section. It's not on School Spring, it's not on Monster.
No, it's not being filled. We filled the payroll position.
What?
Response was that the payroll position was filled, not the accounting position. It's not currently advertised. Is that correct, Chris?
Not going to be filled?
We have an accountant.
But there was a temporary.
There was a temporary person to kind of float between. They didn't have one specific job. It was like we tried finding someone, we could not find someone to bring in. So we decided just to move forward to hire the payroll person.
Okay, that wasn't clear.
Okay, that
Judy?
wasn't clear either, sorry. Thank you for clarifying.
Judy, would it be okay if I recognized Priscilla Lambert before I get to you? Okay, go ahead, Priscilla.
I was very concerned. I have a thing, but is that okay? I was concerned to hear that you've been told that you can't talk to us, because I think as your board and also as representatives by your community, you should be able to bring general issues to the board, and so that we are aware of them also, because we're dealing with it from a different place. I know you do need to, as a former teacher, I do know you do need to follow your chain of command to a certain extent, but I think general issues and that kind of thing, you certainly should be able to talk to board members and be able to express your concerns. I really am sad to hear that you're having so many issues with your payroll and so many things going on. I hope that you know all of the issues that are out there at this point. However, I don't think we can probably promise you that, because they seem to be coming up as we speak, and there seem to be more and more. I would hope that you would continue to bring any of those issues to us, and if you have to go through the chain of command, go do letters to each one and to us as well, because I think we need to be aware. And when we're not aware, we can't help you and can't do anything for you.
So I'm here from the community as a taxpayer, just trying to understand better what is going on, and I feel as if I've gotten some better, fuller picture by being here. But one of the things that I was going to ask was, sounded as if Rhonda was a key person and she left, and I was going to ask why she left, but from your answer it sounds as if it was that she was asked to leave. And so I have a comment and then a question, and the comment is, whatever was the problem that caused her to be asked to leave, and I understand if it's a personnel one, that may not be something you can share, but whatever the problem was, seems as if it couldn't possibly have been worse than everything I've heard that has come after that. And my question question is, David, I appreciate your saying that there are answers that need to be, that we need to get questions answered in a written form so that you can give a fuller answer. And so I just would like to know where those answers will be, because I'd be interested in getting them, and I don't have any idea how that happens.
If Chair query, when we get done tonight, it's my expectation that Josh will collate the questions and forward them to administration. I will be checking in with Chris Pratt in a day or two to find out what a probable timeline looks like. I believe that there is a master email list for WNESU employees, and I think that could get posted to that when we are anticipating a response. I would like to see one within a week or two. In any case, not any later than the next WNESU meeting. I would be disappointed if we had to wait that long. If it takes that long to do it, that's what we will do. And it is possible that we may be releasing a partial list of answers to questions if it looks like we're going to have a lot of hang time before we can answer all of the questions. I hope that's a good enough answer.
Yeah, except just so for me as a community member and not working for the in the school system, would I ask for a staff member?
Drop me a line at david.clark@wnesu.com. Okay. Then you'll be in my address book, and when stuff comes out, I can let you know. You could also email the superintendent of schools. I maybe have a little bit more bandwidth these days than he does, and I think that, you know, for staff members, it's generally more appropriate, as we just discussed, to go through the chain of command first. But you know, these are questions that deserve answers. Molly?
Thank you.
I have a question only because this is on an open meeting, so any of the answers that we have should be coming up in the next meeting, should be in the minutes of the next meeting. There should be answers that anybody in the public, am I correct? I mean, this is all open. So there will be, the answers will be out there for the community.
Okay.
If you get on the WNESU website, you can look at all the minutes for all the meetings.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Jack Breyer, who might or might not need it.
Depending on how loud he is. I just want to touch on 2 points that I think are really important. The first is, in my consulting business, we used to talk about the small town penalty or the small community penalty, the rural penalty. And one of the rural penalties are that you can't find people when you need them. You can't, there is no equivalent of finance temps that you'd find in Boston to fill in holes literally the same day. There literally there isn't a communications professional that you can bring in when you've got a crisis and you need to have somebody dedicated to make certain that the lines of communication are open. Things that you would normally expect in any functioning institution you can't do here. And I think we've really come up against that in terms of what has been I think there's a consensus in an extremely poor communications process. There really hasn't been proactive communication about the problems that we're having. Now, it's possible to use us to some extent on the board, but there is a reason why we push the chain of command issues as a board. The Vermont School Board Association, which we sometimes make fun of, one of their most emphasized ethical points is that boards are here to provide oversight, but they're not here to do the administration's job for them or to butt in on a constant basis. The temptation is very high, and we have to really make certain that if we're to hold our administrators accountable, we can't be doing part of their job for them. we certainly do want to hear from you, but the chain of command is there for a reason. If you're a parent and you have a child that's having difficulties, you know what that chain of command is in terms of reaching out as opposed to going to the board. If you're on staff, you have a chain of command. Our job really is, in many ways, to make certain that the administrators are doing their job. We make the final hire and fire decisions on that. We make the final hire, or make the final decision on budget bottom lines, but we don't make them on line items. We provide oversight, but we are a citizen board, and we are not the administration. And sometimes in small towns that can get confused really quite easily. And if we push back a little bit, that's the reason why. We certainly do want to hear from people, but we would really want to make certain that if you are communicating to us because the chain of command isn't working, not as a supplement to it. And I hope that's appreciated, because otherwise all we do is make the administration's job that much more impossible.
Okay, who's next? Raise your hand. Rick. Pick one, Molly.
Rick.
Rick, okay.
Sorry, Rick, I was looking up there for a Rick.
There's usually several of us around.
So I'm going to be upfront and say that I welcomed and encouraged people to like reach out to me. What I was taught about the chain of command is, as a parent at least, go to the teacher, go to the principal, go to the SU office, go to the board. If you're not getting the answers that you want, and that's why I was open and still want to hear from people that are having issues. Because if you're saying you're having communication issues with the central office and you're not getting the results and the answers that you want, then the chain of command then follows. In my opinion, reach out to the board. So I have no problem with people reaching out to me. In my opinion, we need to hear both sides of stories when there's issues, because we need that like clarity. I personally don't want to operate on he said, she said scenarios. So yes, there is a chain of command. If you're not feeling like you get the answers, please feel not. As far as I'm concerned, you can email, call me, stop me on the street, as several of you have. I have absolutely no problem with that myself. But it's about the communication and that chain. The chain of command, as I always understood it, is if you're reaching out to the next in line but you're not getting the answers, then that's where we're still the next stop. So Jack is probably more technically correct than I am. I sometimes think I'm more morally correct than Jack is. So Jack and I have this thing where we tend to agree to disagree a lot. So
I just have a quick question. Is it my understanding that you have gone through timesheets and that you feel that this coming pay period, everything that has been amok will be corrected?
My understanding is it's already been corrected, and we're starting a new payroll.
It is not all corrected. There are people still who have not gotten their full paychecks. There are people who have gotten paychecks that are incorrect.
Then they need to come in and see us.
What is the best way for them to do that? Because there are people that are not here tonight who have issues, who did not want to come speak, but they have issues and they said they've contacted you and is no answers.
As far as I know, I've answered. I know Teresa's answered a lot. Shauna's helped answer. I know the first payroll, we got about 200 emails. And we already had a full plate. Sometimes work has to take precedence over email. So if we miss somebody, then have them email us again. But they definitely need to come in. With the new system, the hours aren't clear sometimes on the check stubs, but it could be we made a mistake too.
Okay, and as far as you know, all the taxes and all the other deductions that were taken out are correct?
Yep,
And our W-2 is going to be passed out on time?
yep, the 31st of January.
Okay.
All set, Denise?
I'm all set, thank you, David.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I have two questions. One being, I know you want to set up meetings, but when we're working 7:45 till after 5 o'clock at night because we work after school, when do those meetings happen?
We're there usually till 10, 11.
So what do I tell my kid who needs to go to basketball? My two kids.
Well, I'll come in on the weekend, I do now.
Can you make trips to our schools?
Well, all of our paperwork and all of our computer stuff's in our office. I don't know that we'd be much help.
Okay, so my second question is, out of everybody here, are there people here who know that they still have issues with their timesheets?
A hand, please?
People raise their hands.
What was the question?
Problems with your unpaid things. Or any things that are unclear.
Payroll issues.
Any payroll.
I have a question.
No, any payroll issue.
Payroll issue or timesheet.
Well, that's a payroll issue.
Jennifer Vino, and I work at the high school. I'm just curious, I've had several of our substitutes ask about why they haven't gotten paid for their full times that they're working, or that they've worked. Who should, after Edie said, who should I tell them to contact at the SU? Because I've told them a couple of people and they haven't gotten responses, so I'm just curious who we should tell our substitute teachers that come in and sub for us, which is, we don't have a lot of subs and I want to keep them happy. So who should I give them their name to contact if they haven't been paid?
To me.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a concern about the W-2s. So you said that they'd be out on the 31st, but I've also heard you say tonight that the software is doing strange things, plug numbers in and you're getting poor numbers out. So I'm wondering with what level of confidence you have that the software is going to provide accurate numbers on those W-2s, and what checks and balances do you have in place to kind of guarantee that those W-2s, or at least to have a strong confidence level that those W-2s are going to be accurate at the end of the month?
We double check all our numbers, and we will double check the W-2s.
Laura Taylor. I'm a substitute in the district elementary schools. I have only had one correct paycheck since November. One of them was for 9 days in a pay period, and my paycheck was $39.24. After sitting at the SU for 3 hours, I got a handwritten check signed by Mr. Pratt, obviously with no check stub. The next week, the next pay period, I was overpaid $667.08. I was told to come back later for that to be fixed. I couldn't do that. So I was given the check for $1,117.14. I took it to my bank, cashed it, and brought cash back to the SU in the amount of $667.08 and got a signed receipt. So that check stub was incorrect. I was told by Teresa that the January 3rd check stub would reflect the December 6th paycheck that was $39. It would be corrected for the amount of the handwritten check, It would also, the second line would show December 20th paycheck, which was the overpayment of $600. And it would, the last line would show the January 3rd paycheck. The January 3rd paycheck was the first correct paycheck that I've gotten. And it showed none of these. So what I want to know is, how am I to feel confident that my W-2 is going to be correct?
Right.
Because I have nothing to show for it.
No correct paperwork.
Well,
No correct paperwork.
last year's pay can't be on January's because we're in a new calendar year.
Yes, because it, January 3rd paycheck reflected
From January 1st on, that's what you got paid in January. That goes on a totally different W-2.
December.
Right, but you're paid in January. The way the IRS works, you're in 2020 now, it starts over. It doesn't carry on from December, November, whatever. We can send you the information on your paycheck so that you can verify what you got in 2019. But there's no way to put 2019 into 2020.
Okay, so how do I know from the check, the handwritten check? Because I never got deductions for that.
We can send you documentation.
Well, I was told that I would get it before, and I've emailed and gotten nothing. And on this, the overpayment, I'd like to explain what the overpayment was. It was for the year-to-date, $1,232.50 from Saxons River Elementary School sub-pay. I have not subbed at Saxons River in 5 years. Don't know where that came from.
Wow. Well, hopefully they didn't give it to you by mistake. Sorry, Aaron. So you're not supposed to get paid anything? Good job.
I'll let you speak again.
I just want to know, on my last December paycheck, my year-to-date, what I made year-to-date was totally incorrect. It basically, I mean, I don't mind, basically said you made like $20,000. I think I got paid a little bit more than that, but, so I can't, I guess my question is the year-to-date, has that been corrected so that my W-2s will reflect that I made more than that? Because my year-to-date in the last pay period of December, which I usually check to figure out my taxes ahead of time, usually is always right on the money, but it was not this time, so I'm really nervous about the W-2s.
That's because payroll didn't go into e-finance until July. So what you're looking at is July through December. We're going to have to take January to June out of ADS, and then you'll have an entire calendar year.
So it will all be on, will that come as one W-2?
Has to.
Versus two different ones?
You can't have two. You
Okay,
have to
thank you
have
for
one.
that.
Molly?
Oh, you're stuck with me. So I have a question on the 403. So 403s are taken out of your paycheck before your taxes are taken out, which lowers your income, taxable income. So you've taken out 403 for 3 months and you haven't made those deposits. So what happens to the state income tax and the federal income tax? Because they're all off right now.
No, they aren't, because you had the deduction.
You didn't deposit the money, so it's not.
But that's not how it goes. It's whether or not you had it deducted.
I think it has to go into a qualifying account, and you didn't put it into a qualifying account. You just kept it in your own bank account. So I think
No, it went into the right bank account, but we can't We don't upload it to TD Ameritrade. They have to grab it and pull it in. We don't, it's not like health equity where we can go on and put your money in. This actually goes to the bank in an account, and then they have
But it didn't go to the
grab
bank.
it. And that's the problem, they didn't grab it.
And no one noticed?
So you still have a tax issue.
Yep.
Because the money didn't go to the bank, it didn't go into a qualifying
It did
account.
go into the bank.
I'm sorry, you just said it didn't.
It did. It went into the bank. They didn't grab it and put it into your account on TD Ameritrade. But the money
There
was
still is a tax account.
deposited.
There still is a tax issue there. I don't think you can say that it's TD's
Well,
problem.
then we can check into that.
I think you're gonna have to. It's gonna be a state and it's gonna be a federal issue, which means your W-2s are all gonna be wrong.
I think you have a question which is going to be relevant to several people, at least in the room. And Josh, if you have that down, would you mind reading that one back so that we make sure that we can answer it accurately?
Yeah, so the 403B funds come out before taxes, so the gist of the question is how is that going to impact state and federal taxes, because the funds were taken out but not deposited into the 403B.
Yes, and the taxes you show on the pay stub reflect the 403 money being taken out, where
Right,
I think
the
the government can
pre-tax.
look at the money was never taken out.
Does Josh have your question accurately?
I think for the most part.
Okay, well, the part that's not part of the most, could you help us with that?
I think you need a tax attorney to take a look at this, because I think there's a tax issue that maybe you're not aware of that's going to affect everybody with a 403. It's going to affect everybody when you send out a W-2 that's incorrect. And you're talking about sending out a W-2 within the next year and a half.
I want to be very certain that we have your question recorded correctly. Can you and Josh just quickly reconcile it so that we know we've got it accurately?
I think the question is there a tax liability issue that is not going to be reflected on your W-2? Because you show on a paycheck that the tax money has come out, but it isn't.
The microphone is so that Zach TV is picking up your audio. It's not because you can't speak loud enough. We can hear you, but the audio may not carry onto Zach TV recording. That's why the microphone, sorry.
So the question still is, has anybody thought about the issue that you show on a paycheck that you took out money and deposited it into a qualifying account as a 403? That money never went into those accounts. So there is a tax problem there for the state of Vermont and for the federal government. That your W-2s are going to be wrong.
Josh, any questions about the query?
Is there tax liability that will not be reflected on the W-2s? The paychecks reflect that money was deposited into a qualifying account, but it was not.
That's a question that needs a prompt response.
I think it needs a prompt response within the next week, because you're sending out W-2s.
I think so too.
That probably are going to be incorrect.
Okay.
Possibly are incorrect.
I think we'll consider that to be a priority question. Thank you. Molly, who have you got?
Lori Walters, I teach at the high school. I have two questions. Number one, if the software is the problem, how tied are we to the software?
State mandated software.
But we're the only ones using it?
They went off in different stages, and this SU
Were the first, one of the initial SUs that started using it. And so there's like 4 different stages, and by the end of the year or next year, I think it'll be statewide. It's this SU signed up for it, before I started, to be one of the initial SUs to do it. But I think by 23, everyone has to be using it.
And the second question has to do with the 403s that the gentleman brought up. There's also the issue of you're only allowed a maximum amount to put in your 403B per year. And I got 5 deposits today that should have been made last year. So I could be over my limit unintentionally and not reach last year's limit.
Oh, my gosh.
Thank you, Lori. Anyone else? Judy, Copen.
Thank you, Kristen Gottschalk, high school. So I just want to go back to the issue of the TD Ameritrade not pulling the money from the account at the right time. So we got new software this fall. It was really difficult. We lost our payroll person. Our paychecks started getting messed up. And TD Ameritrade coincidentally made mistakes at the same time, and then they coincidentally fixed them today. I guess my question is facetious because I don't believe that there could be a coincidence of that nature. I don't believe that TD Ameritrade happened to mess up the same time all the other payroll problems were happening here. And I don't believe that they happened to fix, for example, Lori's deposits. I don't think TD Ameritrade decided to put it in today, the day of this board meeting.
Well, Chris, it's been my turn to respond. And we previously had a question about when the SU became aware of issues with TD Ameritrade. Thank you, Bob. The SU, I'd like to begin at the beginning. And that is that there was a question raised earlier about when the SU became aware of TD Ameritrade problems. That was part one of the question. The second part of the question was what steps we were going to take to rectify that problem. Both of those are on the list for a written response because these are really crucial questions that need answering. It is an interesting coincidence, and your question deserves a straight answer. So I think you can anticipate that you will get a straight answer to it. And once again, thank you for bringing it up. I'm going to pass this to Molly, and she can go pass it to Judy, and then back across.
So I'm just curious, now that I've heard this software is a statewide mandate, and if I'm understanding correctly, the software is a significant part of why this has been so difficult. So I'm just curious whether you have talked to, anybody here has talked to any other districts that's using this software, anything to learn from other districts, any advice to give? Should the state know that this software is causing major problems? Seems...
Judy, I think that's an easy question, so I would like to ask Edie if she can answer it for you.
Well, the three of us that went live January 1st, we all testified to the House and Senate Ed committees. We've had a lot of correspondence with the AOE, and the 7 that just went live July 1, because of the 3 of us going live in January, they had worked on getting a lot of these issues resolved for the people that were coming on in July. And by September, they were actually providing training, which is huge. You can't learn software from video, which is what they had originally expected us to do.
It didn't work. Jack, did you want to respond to that additionally?
just that we made a really big mistake being an early adopter. I think there's no question about that, and there has been a great deal of communication within this board, both in public session and elsewhere, about whether or not we should issue a press release asking for some answers, whether we should be doing something much more forthcoming, because this is really crippled the functionality of this district for months now, and it's a scandal. And as I said, those of us that look at the code realized immediately why it didn't work, and that it should never have been spec'd, should never have been rolled out, should never have been told, people should have never been told that it was even beta software, because it wasn't. Nobody could have run it. Nobody clearly tested it, even at a preliminary level, before they rolled it out and offered it to us, and we were the people that put our hands up. And that was a mistake. That mistake was based on trusting that there was more competency at the AOE than there apparently was. And this has caused heartache for this district. And I think that we've even talked about whether or not we should be asking for some sort of compensation for all that we've gone through, because it's cost us hundreds of hours in overtime. It's cost all of you just incredible numbers of headaches in terms of getting your money, us in terms of being able to get budgets done. When you're working with something that's non-functional, that has been warranted to you to be functional, it's not a matter of having training, it's a matter of the fact that the software didn't work. And that's not okay. Bad software has killed large corporations, and it damn near has killed this place, but we've managed to function. We've had two really bad hiccups, as you all know, in November and earlier, but it's really more, it's a tribute to the staff that you have and their dedication and how much they care about you guys, that it wasn't a lot worse. Because I've walked into the office 7 o'clock in the evening, seen people in tears trying to get stuff done, and you really need to know that they've done everything they can. Just the thing they're trying to work off of is just not functional.
Go ahead, Molly.
I would just like to add to the questions that are being generated. To find out, Edie, you said that the 403B funds were placed where they needed to be, but Ameritrade did not, as you said, did not go in and grab those funds. That's contradictory to what they told me today on the phone. So I think we need to ask that question in order to get the answer. Were those funds there and they did not grab them? And they can answer that. And I think they need to be asked that, because when I asked, they gave me a different answer. Or were the funds not there when they were supposed to be, but just were put there a few days ago or a week ago? Because the answers that I'm getting tonight are different than the answers I got from TD America this afternoon. And I'm not sure, but I think 2 or 3 other people called them. And did you get the same answer, or am I misinterpreting what they told me?
Oh, we got the same answer.
Thank you.
Okay, we're not going to resolve that quandary tonight. But I do want to once again check with Josh and see how you have the query down. Would you read it back to us, Josh?
Yeah, Brenda, you were given contradictory information by Ameritrade, and that's been given to you tonight. You're being told by Ameritrade that they were not responsible for the transfer not taking place.
Right, and they told me that the wind northeast.
To contact your HR people, I have that from earlier. Yeah.
I'm going to recognize my school board colleague Jessa Westclark here in just a moment before we go back up the floor. But I'm a slow thinker sometimes. I believe that we can get these questions posted to the WNESU website as soon as Josh has had a chance to polish his rough copy. And help me out here, Chris. That would then allow people to review what I would refer to as our work product tonight and make sure that we have those questions correctly. It seems to me that there would also, help me here once again, Chris, it would be possible that there are additional questions that come up that haven't been touched on tonight. It would give us the opportunity to add those to it as well. I just want to be sure that we have as accurate a list of questions that we possibly can. We may have to prioritize some of them, particularly where there are tax impacts, and answer those first, but the end result is we will have all of them answered as quickly as possible, but in no case later than the following SU meeting in February. Okay, now that you've heard from me, I would be interested in hearing from you again if anybody has anything that they would like to touch on. And Jessica's got it.
Can we get a copy of the email that was sent to staff today, sent to the board, please? And then for Josh, on the list of things, we rolled schools, the first school we rolled into the new payroll system in January of 2019.
No, yeah, Athgraph.
Yeah, Athens Grafton. So can we get a report, the percent utilization of the new payroll system and the percent of problems with each payroll run from January to see if it was consistent or if something terrible happened in the late fall? You know what I mean? Like January, we put 12% of people into the new payroll, and of those checks, 3% of them were wrong
people.
or something. Can you do that?
There
for
weren't
the year?
any that I know of that were wrong. Only 15 when
That's what
they
I'm
run
asking
in
though, just
January.
as we went through the year when we added more schools and to see what happened
And it broke.
in the fall.
The August 30th was the worst, yeah.
Thank you.
You got a hand way in the back, Molly. Thank you.
Lorraine Bennett. I'm a substitute teacher. I've been an employee of the union for almost 25 years. 20 years as a substitute. And I had one person on the hill that I could go to. And I would like to thank her for all her years of dedication and commitment to our community.
Lorraine, just for the record, would you identify who that employee is, please? I said, just for the record, Lorraine, would you identify who that employee is, please?
Rhonda. That young lady over there. Sorry.
Oh.
Rhonda.
Thank you. Okay, has everyone who wants to comment had the opportunity to comment? If we're good, I expect that we will, what's a reasonable timeline to have these posted to the website, Chris? The questions?
Yeah, when I get them from Josh, we can post them within the next few days.
Can we get them in 48
By the end of the
hours?
week?
Yeah.
I usually have 5 days. I'll do this quickly.
Chris anticipates that questions will be posted by the end of the week. And is it possible for people to add questions, Chris?
Yeah, send them to me. If you have more questions, just email them to me and I'll add them to the list.
We actually have a fairly sizable amount of our agenda ahead of us. Obviously, this is a continuing, it's really the biggest concern that this board has right now, but we do have to wade through a few other items that will have impacts on school as well. If there are people who feel that they want to speak to people quietly, well, when we get done with our business, which will include an executive session, I imagine that we'll be out of here hopefully another 45 minutes or so. But I want to thank everyone who's taken the opportunity to drop whatever they were doing and come in and help us try and solve some pretty big problems. So I would like to...
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Okay, so I want to get a wiggle on here with reports. Chris, superintendent and assistant, you want to give us the highlights, or can we rely on the written portion?
You can rely on the written portion.
Okay. Edie, financial.
None.
Okay. Executive committee. Rick, is there a update on the superintendent evaluation?
Yes. We have paperwork process. There are, just because I can't talk to people I can't see. So we have two draft documents on the drive that Jack and I and David have
Do you want
reviewed.
this?
No,
Because
no,
we
now.
can't hear you.
Sorry?
We can't hear you.
If you want, I can talk into that. So Mr. Breyer and I were charged with
6C.
Jesus. There. Mr. Breyer and I were charged with coming up with some draft templates to do a superintendent evaluation. I developed them, put them in a drive. Jack looked at them, David looked at them. David then has shared them with Mr. Pratt for his review. We need to finish up either developing them as two different documents or either combine them into one. One was based on a 360-degree review and one was based on a previous assessment that was used for the superintendent. We had hoped to have them ready today, but we've been spending a lot of time
On something else.
on something else of late. So hopefully before the next SU meeting, we will have an executive committee meeting, is my understanding, and finish up those documents and get them out to either bring them back here for this board to approve, or do we just move them on? I'm not sure.
I think we should have an executive session to share them with the board before they go out. Hopefully it'll be a perfunctory approval.
But the gist of the story is we have drafts, we just need to finish cleaning them up, and time has been short for some of us.
So let the record show that our rig's done 99% of the work.
I wasn't going to say that.
Okay. Other business, busing update?
Come on, Stan.
No, we did not forget you this time.
And you even have a microphone now.
It's like a talking stick, right?
Yeah. Save yourself the time. So long.
You need it because it won't record. It won't record.
Yeah,
You have to
Here.
use it.
Come on, Stan.
You need it recorded for the.
For posterity.
In fact, it's easy, you can't look it up unless you use the mic.
And you can look at.
Okay, let's go home.
Oh, you came with the report.
You up?
These are painful wires here.
So this is a list of all the buses. The ones in the red are the ones that are in bad shape.
What does PP mean in the miles column?
The what?
What's PP?
Propane.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Now, W8 isn't being run right now because it won't pass inspection. And it's going to be
As we said.
quite a bit of money to fix it.
Is that
That's the
same
one
as
I mentioned before.
11
that
and
was-
13 too? 11 says will not pass, and 13 says may not.
Well, 13 needs a little work, so we can get that one running for the end of the year. Just needs about $1,500 worth of work, and that'll be all right.
These are full-size buses?
Yeah, yes.
W7 is a 48 passenger. It tells you on there what passengers they are.
Yep.
We're,
Next to last column.
Passenger
oh,
size.
okay, that's, what- yeah, pass size, I didn't know that now. Okay,
And that one's not too bad, but W8 and W11 are the two that, W11 is running right now, but that bus is,
We'll pass it next time.
well, it'll go until the end of June.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
pass
we
that.
get another inspection February, March. Inspections in November, December, February, March, and July and August. I don't know why they do them November, December, then February, March. You only got a month in there, and you have to do them again, but just because they're school buses, I guess. But then you can notice that 13, I think, is an 08 or an 09.
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
And W11 is a 2010. W8 is a 11, I think. But then the next one is a 2013.
Yeah,
So-
29 too.
Yeah, the W7 is an 09, ain't it, or an 08?
It's an 08.
Yeah. So you're not gonna get nothing for them buses
Bus, yeah.
when you trade them in. They're just too old. Because a lot of times, if it's under 10 years, these companies can take them and then they can ship them to like Nicaragua or them countries, and they use them for busing still down there. But you can't if it's 10 years old. So that gives you an idea of, but the only thing that I'm going to have you think about, 8 and 11, they're going to have to be taken out. So if I come back in April, I'm going to ask you for 2 new little buses. But the thing is, this year's budget won't be affected. What we can do is, like we did before, Edie, we'll go for a year, a note for a year, and we pay like, what, 1.75 or 250, whatever it is.
Low.
And then we'll it'll go on to the 21-22 budget. And then you pay for it at the end of that. But then after that, you should be good for a year or 2 before you should have to start getting any more buses. Because the next one is up at 2013. So that's, you know, a couple of years, and you gotta be thinking about that, but.
What about this other 2010? That's 13. It says it may not.
Yes.
The W7?
Yeah,
That's a-
W13.
13, yeah.
The 2010.
Yeah,
Said
that's-
it may not pass. That was the 15.
But I think we can get by without another new big bus.
Okay.
So what I may try to do is trade that one with the 2 little ones. You know, maybe we can trade all 4 of them and get a little bit for them and make it easier to buy. The 2 little buses, they say, will run around the mid-50s for a price. So you're talking roughly $110,000 for 2 of the 22 passenger buses. And they are critical because they haul kids to work, they pick kids up in the morning, and they're special ed buses, and you can't take a big bus in somebody's dooryard sometimes. It's hard to get turned around and stuff.
Got a question for you, just a broad brush question. You know, we don't keep our ambulances or fire equipment out on the open, out in the open and open to the elements.
Yeah.
And these are a large part. And we just had some discussions about paving the high school grounds, and one of the questions that came up was the area that the buses sit on, basically open gravel. And I know that when you put a car on a muddy dirt road, it rots out about twice as fast as it does if it's paved, and it rots out 3 or 4 times as fast as it does if it's in a shelter. Should we be thinking about having some sort of bus ports for these vehicles?
Would be nice.
Well, what would be would you be interested in checking out for us both what the cost of something like that might be and what the turnaround might be in terms of whether it pays for itself? Because I think it pays for itself eventually, just don't know how fast.
Yeah, well, I also, from what I heard, when they paved the high school this next time, they're going to pave under where the buses park.
No, they cut that. That's why they said there was an SU problem, which it was, and we need to figure out if what the SU
What's the
should do.
difference if it's an SU problem? The taxpayers are still the same ones that pay their tax, their thing up there too.
Yes, Cheryl?
Stan, you may have said this, but W9 is a 2009, and so would we not need to replace it?
That bus is still in pretty good shape. So, I mean, we may still get a couple of years out of that.
About the 10-year limit that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's 10 years now, so it's, but, yeah, we bought that bus used, and it's still in pretty good shape. Because that bus was kept in the building for all them years until we bought it. I don't know, what did we get it, 4 years ago? 3 years ago or something?
Yeah.
But that bus was kept inside the building.
Yeah.
So,
The current keeps all their buses in buildings, and
You know,
they're
I
actually
called the
building on
current.
extra to do that.
a year or so ago, I called the Current because somebody said they'd let you run your buses through there and wash them. You know, you pay them,
Right, yeah.
but nobody ever called me back, so.
That was my exact question, since we're talking about a bus garage.
Yeah.
What do you have for a wash station? Do you have one?
We just
Use a
run
hose.
hose off the high school
We
and
have
wash them.
we lose a lot to rust.
Yeah, and and you can't get underneath them with just the hose, because the guy's not gonna crawl under
Right.
the hose.
So, okay.
They put in a
That's
new
what
washer
UPS
just a
does.
few years ago, and then they told, because the police and the police department and the highway were using the bus, the bus washer, and when they put the new one in, they disallowed it. So I don't know if maybe called you back because they didn't want to, but there were reasons why they didn't want us using it, especially highway equipment, that kind of thing. Because it's a recycling one, so it actually filters the water and puts it back through the process again. So I don't know if that's why they didn't,
Well,
but
UPS
yeah.
washes their trucks every night.
There, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you try calling them again, yes.
Yeah, if we could find out a way to get them washed
Power pressure
underneath
wash, yeah.
more often.
They'd last longer.
It
And
just
then
seems
have a
like we're
wand.
costing ourselves.
And I'm also
$6,000
looking
a
at,
year just in rust.
Well, that's what
Pouring
I'm,
the tolls over here and getting them undercoated with
Yeah.
oil.
we don't do that, okay.
So, Stan, do you need action from this board tonight?
No?
Okay, this is
I think so.
this is information.
Yeah, I just letting you know, and then probably April, I'll come back and ask to go out to bid on 2 small buses.
Do you think you might be in a position to talk to us more about maybe sheltering and washing
Yeah.
and doing
Oh,
some
yeah.
subkeep stuff?
Yeah.
Because I just, it kills me. We don't run buses, the way that urban areas do, and they spend a lot of time sitting. And I just hate to see them disintegrating because perhaps there are things we could do to care for them a little bit better. The engines don't tend to go, it tends to be the bodies that go on.
Can you get a price on undercoating the ones you think need it?
Yeah, I know,
Well,
I think it was a year ago or so, he was gonna charge like $168 for a big bus.
Yeah,
that's a
not
really
bad.
good price.
No, I don't, and
$100,000 piece of
Patriot said, well, we can do it, this new type of stuff up to theirs, but they were like $400 a bus. But it's supposed to last quite a while, but.
Any other questions before we keep moving here? Anybody
No,
else?
Good, thank you, Stanley.
Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, all the
Hope you were
time.
entertained. Okay, we're going to pass over a state health insurance update. Appointments, Chris, do we have any?
No.
Okay, we will have an executive session for, okay.
Executive session.
Okay. For employee request, do we do an update on lease as well?
We can do that afterwards.
Okay. And then director's comments. Cheryl, would you like to start?
Well, I think for the record, just again to thank all of the people who came tonight for expressing so clearly the concerns and making it real for us in terms of firsthand experience with the challenges we've had. And then I would also add what others have said, that as a board member coming into the SU office often to review warrants and things like that, I see how hard these folks are working. So this has been a difficult challenge every direction that we look. I think the process tonight has been a good one to establish questions and try to get responses in writing. So again, thanks to everybody, including the board.
Ollie. I'm very pleased that I came tonight. I'm not a voting member of the SU board, but I could see this is going to be an interesting evening, and I'm glad we've got it out in the open, and that we're going to get some answers and make sure everyone's getting compensated the way they need to be.
I just want to say I think we've got a great staff and a great administration, and I hope that we can work closely together and solve problems that affect all of us.
I was really happy that as many people did show up and articulated issues, some of which were surprises. Sometimes this is a way we learn. I do want folks to know that most of our phone numbers are public, and it's usually our name at WNESU.com. You can use it for anything you want. And feel free to do that, notwithstanding all the stuff about chain of command, because it is important. We don't mind, we actually appreciate being kept in the loop. There have been times when kids have been at risk, where people went outside the lines to tell us, and it made a difference, and that's certainly more than okay.
Jessa?
I've said enough. I'm good. Thank you.
Deb?
I just want to say thank you to the runner, who wasn't a voting member of the SU and ran herself ragged getting to all these people, so it's reported on Fact TV. Thank you, Molly.
I'm just hoping that with all of the information that has been shared tonight, that everybody gets a really timely response and gets accurate information for the next couple weeks, and that our business office, who has been working hard, I know, but they will be able to correct any errors in a very rapid and timely way.
Brenda?
Yes, I think we saw community come together for communication, and I think some of that communication was not, it was like you felt like you were blindsided on some of it, maybe not properly prepared. I know as a board, I don't think we knew how serious some of the concerns were till tonight. There was a lot of time spent on it tonight. So we saw problem solving, conflict management, communication go on. But I think we need to take it to another level, because I don't think it's anybody at this table's accountability totally, responsibility. I don't believe it was a business management responsibility totally. I think we need to take it as a community to the state. I think some public comments to the state would be in order. Especially if it's a mandated thing and it was defective.
You got it.
I think that's important.
Thank you, Brenda. Charles? Rick?
I would like to thank you, Mr. Clark, for chairing this meeting and more or less moderating it. I'm very pleased with everyone at this table in the front, with everyone who visited here tonight. I thought it had the potential to be a very difficult and unpleasant meeting, and I think it went extremely well. And
I'm actually kind of proud to be part of this board right now, than the way that we like listened and handled things. I feel really good about. I'm not saying any problems are resolved or solved, but we heard issues, we responded, and everybody was respectful on both sides of the room, and I think that's an extremely important thing that has not always been true with this type of a meeting. So I'm very pleased to be sitting here with this group of people working in this type of format.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, date of the next meeting, Chris?
26th of February?
February 26th, 6 o'clock.
February 26th, 6:30?
At the high
6
school, right?
6 o'clock.
It's at the high school before our.
Right. February 26th, 6 o'clock at the high school.
We'll set up extra chairs.
Yes.
We're gonna,
Any question?
I think there's somebody who wanted to know about what's going on in executive session, who maybe wants to speak to you.
well, what I have on my list here is, what is it, employee request?
Yep,
Chris?
sabbatical request.
We have an employee sabbatical request, and I'm anticipating that we will have an update on a potential lease for new offices for the SU with action may or may not occur afterward in public session. So if you have lots of time.
So we'll go into executive session to cover. That's what that, put that in there, so it's not a public session.
Yes, sir.
Does the board have an issue with giving us like 10 minutes to clear up audio equipment before you go in executive session, or?
I'm wondering if we can clear out and let you
guys
clean
do.
up at your leisure.
Yeah.
Can we do that here?
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah,
room?
we can come, I mean, I just need the screen for the lease part of it, but we can meet in a different room with Heather about.
Oh, yeah. Hey, could you do that?
Let's do that.
Are you meeting with her first?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we request if I join her too? Is that okay for the board?
Is there any objection?
As a union representative.
No, we can invite.
I don't hear any objections, so let's do that.
Somebody's got to make a movement.
How about a motion to go into executive session at, what is it, Josh, 8:45?
Yep.
Motion, whatever.
So moved.
It's 8:45.
I think we all owe Josh a nice little round of applause for
Yeah.
notes. Josh,